Voice of Indonesia from Indonesia to the world. Viewers and listeners, Indonesia is so rich in various delicious food. One of them is tempeh, a fermented soybean food. It is so popular here in Indonesia, particularly on Java Island. We can eat tempeh as a side dish and even a snack. Interestingly, we can find tempeh not only in Indonesia, but also in London, England. Just like the jersey I'm wearing now, listeners. And it is William Mitchell who spreads the deliciousness of tempeh all the way to London, England. So how this story began, we'll find out more after this video. Tempeh, a superfood from Indonesia that is made from fermented soybean. We can eat it as a side dish and snack. But apparently, tempeh not only attracts Indonesians, but also Europeans in England. William Mitchell, a British man who fell in love with tempeh in 1995, has been running a tempeh business called Warung Tempeh, later called the Tempeh Man. So how's the story began? Stay tuned for a special interview with Voice of Indonesia, from Indonesia to the world. Alright, viewers and listeners, we really can't wait for the story behind Warung Tempeh in London, England, managed by the Tempeh Man, William Mitchell. Hello, good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia, and good morning to you, William.
Hello, Rama. Hello, Voice of Indonesia, and hello, listeners in Indonesia. I hope you're all well.
Hello, apa kabar, William?
Baik, baik.
Good to hear that. So, let's share with us what actually you do at Warung Tempeh, or now we call it the Tempeh Man. Precisely, please.
Yeah, well, I lived in Indonesia for a long time, many years ago, back in 1995. And I was there for about 7-8 years. So obviously, as a lover of food, I came to love tempeh. And I was eating tempeh every day in the warungs and rumah makans in Indonesia. My favorites are tempeh orek and tempeh bacem. And it was in 2013, and I frequently go back to Indonesia and see friends. You know, I have a lot of love for the country and the culture and the people. So I'm always there. And I was thinking in 2013, I was eating great tempeh, and there wasn't much tempeh available in the UK. And what there was not very nice. It's pasteurized to extend the shelf life, but not like the wonderful tempeh in Indonesia. So I decided to learn how to make great tempeh in Java, and some lovely kind Tukang tempeh took me under their wings and showed me how to make tempeh. And I decided to introduce it to the UK. But it's difficult to know. It's difficult to access. The food market is a large place, and it's where just a small producer like me would just disappear. So I decided to open my warung and introduce it directly to people, because people don't know how to cook it. So I thought I will cook it for them and sell it as lunches to office workers. And I opened that in 2014. And we've been selling tempeh to the office workers in central London, in a small part of London, in sort of east central, since then. I cook it. I don't only make tempeh Indonesian style, because it needs to be a full lunch rather than a sort of side dish or a snack. So I do a sayur lodeh with tempeh, I call it lodeh tempeh. And I also do another dish, and we cook it on the stall. And I serve it to the office workers and introduce them to a little bit of Indonesia. It's maybe slightly palsu. It's okay. It's nice, and people love it. And I make it a bit thicker, the sauce, just for the UK palate. And so I've been selling my tempeh there for many years, and people come to love it. I have fans from all over the world, and people who go back to their home countries, because London, as you know, is a very international city. So there's people from all over the world there, and I'm fortunate to be able to serve them and introduce them to tempeh, and proper tempeh. Indonesian people are proud of my tempeh. I have many Indonesian customers. And they say it's like the tempeh you get in Indonesia. So that's one of my goals, was to be able to produce tempeh as per the fresh, lovely tempeh with the thick mycelium that you get in Indonesia. And hopefully I've managed to do that and introduce it to a wider audience.
You did it, because you have done it since 2013.
I started making tempeh in 2013 and I opened my warung in 2014. So it's been going a long time.
Yeah, so you did a good job. Very wonderful. So you sell tempeh in your restaurant or food stall, or you also distribute it to the other restaurants in London or in other cities?
Yes, absolutely. So when we started, it was just the warung and people did not know tempeh. So if I went to a restaurant and said, oh, would you like to, what is that? And it was a bit too early in the sort of market. But with the growth of veganism and the plant-based movement, there is a lot more demand for, let's say, meat substitutes. And I say to people, tempeh is not a meat substitute. It is a healthy food, but it's not a health food. It's an Indonesian food. It's a delicious food from Indonesia. You don't have to be a vegan to enjoy it. But the growth of this market has encouraged people to be more open-minded. And so now I'm in a position where now when I speak to chefs, they're interested. 8 years ago, they would say, oh, what's this? Fermented soy, and now they're interested. So I give samples, I promote tempeh, and yes, I supply to many restaurants, predominantly in London because it's a little bit more cosmopolitan, but I do supply to restaurants throughout the UK as well. We do next day courier service, and I only do wholesale large quantities. And we sell to many places in London. We keep our warung as well because that's where we started. So I do one day a week now on a Tuesday in the warung, but because that's where my heart is, and I have customers for years. But we sell to many places. There is we sell, for example, to quite a well-known high-end burger chain called Meat Liquor, and they've got about over 10 branches in London. It's quite fashionable. One of them has a bowling alley. It's kind of a night out, and they specialize in meat, but they also do a plant-based burger for the vegetarians and vegans there, and you make their plant-based burgers using our tempeh, so we supply them, and it's their most popular. And people love it. Even a lot of the meat eaters there eat the tempeh burgers, but we supply to. There's a Korean fusion place, a Thai place. We supply obviously to Indonesian restaurants and Malaysian, but I try to be sort of broaden it. And I like to give tempeh to chefs that are really experimental to see what they can create with it. So there's some very innovative dishes being made. I've been cooking with tempeh professionally for nearly 10 years now. So I often advise the chefs on how they can use it, how they can tailor it to their menus. And obviously it's very versatile, as you know, and I just try to say to people, don't keep in a box with tempeh. Try use your imagination. You can grate it, you can fry it, you can grill it, you can bake it. So I just like, if you get chefs that are experimental, or they have a lot of fun with tempeh. So and I think it really is the food for the future. But I always say to people, it originates from Indonesia, and we must give the credit to Indonesia for introducing tempeh to the world. I'm just a small part of the tempeh, evolution in the UK and around the world. But, in Indonesia, you don't need me to tell you how wonderful tempeh is.
The versatility, that's one of things that make tempeh really lovable. So, William, how about the most favorite menu there? Tempeh menu.
I would say, for me, it's the lode tempeh. I'd say probably what is quite popular. People like to have tempeh. I see in a lot of restaurants that I supply, they tend to do like tempeh in curries, which is you don't tend to get in Indonesia so much. But so, for example, a lot of the Thai restaurants, they cook it in a sort of Thai red curry, those kind of things, which are very popular. But obviously, as in Indonesia, everyone likes tempeh goreng, and likewise in the UK. So we like fried tempeh here. For me, that's my favorite indulgent snack. Obviously, tempeh absorbs a lot of oil, so I say to people, to marinate it, and I used, the typical tempeh goreng marinade I suggest to people with the turmeric and garlic and a little bit of coriander powder and salt. And so I kind of use that. It stops it absorbing so much oil. So I like my tempeh goreng with a little bit of sambal and kecap manis. But yeah, people in the UK, it's all personal taste. One of the chefs, guy Stefanos, who had a wonderful restaurant called Niche, and he was developing some dishes, a tempeh tata, which is traditionally a French dish where they would use raw meat, and it's chopped up raw. And he's kind of using tempeh like that. There's Gautier Soho, which is a Michelin star restaurant, and they're using tempeh at the moment. But when they use very small portions, don't they? High-end restaurants. So it's not good for me. I like to sell in volume. But so it's so many different ways.
Okay. But the most favorite one that your customers really like is the curry. Tempeh curry.
And well, for my customers personally, they love the lode tempeh. I have a cumin tempeh, which is, yes, I call the lode tempeh. That's my customers. But I think I have my personal customers on the warung, and then I also see customers of other restaurants as my customers because they still eat my tempeh, but cooked by other chefs. So the tempeh curry is popular there as well.
All right. And then we have a question here from our listeners on Instagram with the account at Arum Segara. She asks how you get ingredients to make tempeh in England and what are challenges or difficulties in making tempeh there?
The ingredients, obviously the soya beans, you've got a wide source. We try to source them sustainably. So we have our current batch is from Canada. And we try to use non-GMO soybeans, and the starter culture. We can make our own starter culture. But when I started, I used to import it directly from Indonesia. As everyone is probably familiar with, the Raprima starter culture from Bogor. So we used to use that, and now we make our own. So when we make it. Obviously, I use traditional techniques. I use some tempeh makers around the world try to cut corners and to speed up the process, but I still do the double ferment. I'm not sure how much your listeners know about making tempeh, where we boil the beans and soak them overnight, and we let the lactic acid remove it, lowers the pH, and then we wash, drain, and make the tempeh. Then it ferments, which brings us on to the main difference. In Indonesia, as there's many tukang tempeh all over in all the towns in Java, and you'll often see the tempeh fermenting in front of people's houses, and they have them on the racks, and the tempeh is fermenting. And the Indonesian environment it couldn't be designed better for making tempeh. It's warm, and I think there's spores in the air, which is why it has the best tempeh. And in the UK, the weather is the biggest hindrance. So therefore, we have to create an incubation chambers, and rooms are warm enough for the tempeh to incubate. So that kind of brings its own set of issues that we need to work around. So in Indonesia, it just ferments outside. When you have it inside, you've got to regulate the temperature carefully. But you cannot have hot spots, because in one area, one part of the room might be hotter, and then the tempeh gets too hot as it ferments, and that spoils it. Likewise, you might have colder areas where it doesn't ferment quickly enough. So that is the main challenge, to equalize those areas. So we can use circulatory systems. If you use fans, too much air over the tempeh encourages it to sporulate. Now, when it sporulates, people who use tempeh, like tempeh buy in markets, you may have seen little black spores. It starts to go a bit sort of grey, which are fine. It's not a bad thing, but it's where the mycelium is starting to turn to the mushrooms and sporulate, and that often happens when there's too much airflow. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit geeky now, but they're the things that we have to mitigate. So mainly the fermentation in the other weather is what we have to combat when we make tempeh in a colder climate.
Okay, that's the problem, of course, because of the different weather. Yeah, is that okay?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And I wish I could have a longer talk with you, but because of time is running out, this is my very last question for you. What's your next plan, William?
Thank you. Well, as the market is now ready, I still look at the people we supply to, and as I've been cooking with tempeh in so many ways, there are so many different ways of using tempeh that I think are not being explored thoroughly. And so I'm going to be opening, hopefully, fingers crossed, opening a tempeh-only restaurant in London, and having I'm in a warung now, but having a restaurant will allow the flexibility to have different menu items from dishes inspired globally, and we can have breakfasts, lunches, dinners, even desserts using tempeh. So I want to have this permanent restaurant as a place which is a showcase for tempeh and all the wonderful myriad of dishes you can create with it, from a tempeh scramble, grated sort of like scrambled eggs, to curries, to baked dishes, to tempeh Wellington. So I really want to be able to show the people of London and the visitors what tempeh, how it can be used. So that's the plan for 2023. So hopefully we'll be able to achieve that and have a permanent location. And hopefully it's popular enough so I don't go bankrupt in the process.
You will make it, William. Okay, William, thank you so much for your time. Once again, thank you for introducing Indonesian food. It is so touching indeed. Keep going on.
And thank you very much, Rama, for having me on your show. And thank you to the listeners for listening to me get a bit geeky on tempeh. I appreciate you listening. And hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend. And sorry for being late getting on. We had some technical things to get there. But thank you so much, Rama. And thank you, listeners. And hope you all enjoy your weekend.
Yes, have a nice weekend. See you, William. Bye-bye.
You too. Take care. Bye.